7,000 to 5,000 years ago, human beings started to store grain. Now, they only started to store grain to stop children dying in the bad years. We were hunter-gatherers, essentially, as we came out of the last ice age. And we were able to get by hunting and gathering. The trouble were the bad years. In the bad years, the children died. It was natural, therefore, to begin to try and herd animals, store grain. That's what we did. I'll explain a little bit later in the presentation why this is a thermodynamic disaster. Done for totally the right reasons, but the tragedy is what we now have to do is unpick everything we have done in order to once again save the children. So I won't spend too much time on the panels on the left and the right hand side. Essentially, if you badly want to blame somebody, blame him because he's not going to know. But if you badly want to blame somebody, you blame the international system that has catastrophically failed in any way, shape or form to limit our emissions of greenhouse gases. If you want to go back a little bit further and apportion blame, the map on the right-hand side shows the preponderant impact of the United States and Europe in the concentrations of greenhouse gases that are already up there in the atmosphere. Okay? But if there's anything I want to do with this intervention, it's to maybe move past blame, because feeling guilty and blaming yourself or everybody else for the situation we're in is necessarily non-productive. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because those of you who walked in that door should have picked up this presentation, and indeed I know Marlette has made some of my other works available to you from which these are taken. You only need to retain the title. Roughly speaking, you've been told that we may be heading for 1.5 or 2 degrees above pre-industrial warming. That's not true. This is based on very old science, and it's essentially inaccurate, and there isn't a single independent scientist in the world who would support that position now. We're actually heading for 10 degrees warming. That could happen within 20 to 30 years. And on the way to 10 degrees, we'll pass 4 degrees. Now, 4 degrees is interesting because that's extinction for our species. So keep that one in mind. I'm not just making this up. The Semireti will again share with you some of the more detailed work that I've done, and that has been done by the Foresight Group. I've cited on the left-hand side, you don't really need to read this stuff, but I've cited the recent scientific papers pointing to the catastrophe happening in our atmosphere, biosphere, oceans, wherever you care to look, since the last International Panel on Climate Change Assessment Report number 5 was published in 2013. All this has come to light since then. We've realised that we have been living in a fool's paradise, thinking that nice gentle reductions in greenhouse gas emissions and maybe changing to electric cars should see us over the bump. This is simply not the case. I show you the Pink Panther on the right because I want you to remember, if you remember anything about this presentation, remember the Pink Panther. The Pink Panther, in my favourite episode, gets hold of a vacuum cleaner. And he starts kind of hoovering up the mess in his living room. And then when he's finished the mess in the living room, he kind of sees a painting he doesn't like, and then he sucks down the painting. And then he realizes he doesn't like a wall, and then he sucks down a house. And then the vacuum cleaner swallows him, and then the vacuum cleaner swallows itself. This is the view that most people have on what we need to do to combat climate change. They honestly think somebody is going to come up with the Pink Panther's vacuum cleaner very soon. We're just going to point it at the sky, and we're going to suck down the CO2 and the methane and the nitrous oxide that is causing global warming. I have dreadful news. No such invention is on the horizon, nor is it even possible. I'm not going to give you a lecture on the second law of thermodynamics to explain why it isn't possible, but I will come back to this. I just want you to read the square in the middle, the red square in the middle. Because the red square in the middle isn't me, it's not some crazy lunatic of a doomer society or somebody who wants us all to move into a bunker under Mont Blanc. What this is the European Strategy and Policy Analysis System, led by the formidable Anne Mettler. So this is a group of foresighters who work à la fois for the Commission, Parliament and Council in Europe. They produced a report last week, launched with great pomp, generally ignored of course, and it says very bluntly, if we do not keep temperature increases below 1.5 degrees, we risk heading towards extinction later in this century. Now remember this moment. This is the moment when organisations like the European Commission, the European Parliament and the European Council told you you're heading for extinction. So, maybe I'm making it all up. Maybe nothing's happening. Maybe everything feels quite fine here in Geneva. Maybe everything feels quite fine in Brussels. It didn't feel fine in Brussels for me last Christmas. I made a Christmas dinner. The potatoes and the onions were tiny. I couldn't understand why I couldn't buy decent sized potatoes or decent onions. And the reason, of course, is that all across Europe, because of the climatic upheavals last summer and autumn, basic food crop yields were down 25%. All across the steppes in Russia, across Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, across the wheat belt in the US, wheat yields are down astonishing amounts. This crisis will happen again this year. We lose the same amount this year. We lose the same amount the next year. And we lose the same amount the year after that. Within 3 or 4 years, even we wonderfully comfortable Europeans will probably be trying to survive with half the amount of food we currently have. So you still think I'm making it up? Take a look at the one on the right-hand side. This is only the vertebrate population of the world. In other words, things with backbones and bones. In the last 30 years, we've been able to measure that the total amount of vertebrate life on this planet has collapsed by 99%. And what's left, as distinct from the tiny little human and the huge big elephant, are loads of cows, loads of humans, and virtually no wild animals. It's way worse than that. There are no wild animals, there are no fish, there are no insects. Your microbiome inside your own body is collapsing. At least 20 or 30% down from what it was 20, 30 years ago. Life on this planet, we are not on the verge of the sixth mass extinction. We're in the middle of it, and very likely to be part of it. So again, this is just going to be people far away, right? People who live in deserts, unpleasant places, right? So I have a little test for everybody here. Is there a point on this? Probably isn't. There's no good point. Right, okay. This is the heat and discomfort index that I'm showing you on the left-hand side. What this is wet bulb temperature. What this gives you is the temperatures that living creatures can survive. This particular index is created for humans. So, if on the left-hand side it shows the temperature, and as you move to the right, it shows the percentage humidity. So in other words, you'll all have experienced that awful feeling when it's only quite hot, but it's really humid and it feels much, much hotter. So on the left-hand side, you can see 42 degrees. Human beings can easily survive well over that. But there's a catch here, because you go to the very right-hand side, on the bottom right-hand side where the red starts. That's only 36 degrees. That 36 degrees corresponds with 100% humidity. So in other words, the fittest human being on the planet, if he is in a temperature of 36 degrees, where there is 100% relative humidity, he dies in 6 hours. Because his core temperature, which is at 37 degrees, cannot transfer heat to the skin, which is 36, well it can, but the skin can't get rid of that heat by way of sweating into the air, because the air is completely saturated. So right along that red edge is the edge of where human beings can live for 6 hours. Now, you see, I've circled 44 there. I was in a city in Europe in August. The temperature was 36 degrees, and the relative humidity was 40. It only needed to be 1.5 degrees higher, and with 20% extra humidity for tens of thousands of people to be dying in the streets. Would anyone like to guess what city I was in?
Palermo.
Where?
Palermo.
Palermo. No? Anywhere else?
London. Brussels.
Smart. No wonder you're an answer. Brussels. 1.5 degrees, 20% relative humidity. My daughter, who works in retail, was given 3 days off her job because you can see she's on the edge of the orange, which is extremely dangerous. They weren't going to die, but they didn't want them working. Brussels, last year. It'll be worse this year. So now the next question. This is kind of hard to live with. How are you dealing with the dissonance? I love that word, dissonance. It means trying to live with the unlivable. The guy on the bottom left-hand side, he's hilarious. You can actually still watch him on CNN. He's an occasional Andy Day. He was Obama's advisor for green growth. Way back then, he was saying to people, look, people have no idea what to do. How we get out of this bind is beyond me. He describes whether it's Blair or Obama or Christine Lagarde, whoever it is, they're just juggling chickens and chainsaws. Nobody has faced up to the size of the problem we're facing, but you'll be facing it very soon, believe me. On the top right-hand side is my favourite quote. This guy's great, a really nice man, Oppenheimer. And the unfortunate man actually made this statement. He feels terribly sorry for the poor people in the world and all of nature which might collapse because we wealthy folks are going to be fine. Like we wealthy folks in the better off world are not part of nature. This is insanity. And this is still a deeply held belief, I suspect, most of the people around this table, and certainly for those who you represent. It's very, very frightening that people still have this attitude. Bottom right-hand side is a much better one. This is President Niinistö from Finland. Great character who actually had the courage at the White House to tell Trump, if we lose the Arctic sea ice, we lose the globe. So at the top of this world, we have this huge big lump of ice, and it's going to be gone within 2 or 3 years. That absorbs an incredible amount of the heat we should already be feeling. When it goes, it'll come back the next year, but only during the winter. And eventually, after about 10 years from the first, what they call blue water event, which I predict will be September this year. Within 10 years of that first blue water event, the loss of reflectivity and the additional heat pouring into the ocean because of the lack of the ice will be the equivalent of putting into the Earth climate system the same amount of heat as all the greenhouse gases that human beings have ever emitted since we crawled out of the last ice age. My own personal favourite is the picture of the TGV. I love that TGV picture because I took it. I was on one of the very first Eurostars, the Eurostars, one that goes to London, whatever, the London-Brussels one. I was on one of the very first ones back in 95, 96 when it opened. I remember getting off and seeing 10 gazillion dead insects plastered off the front of this train. This is the front of the train that I got off in Brussels, having come back from London last July. So we had ploughed through the southern English countryside, we had ploughed up through the north of France, we had crashed through Belgium, we arrived in the Gare de Midi, and there was one dead fly on the windscreen. One, insect populations have crashed by 80% in Europe in the last 20 years. We don't survive without insects. And my favourite story is everybody I know sort of says, well, I think it's because the new aerodynamic design means the flies don't hit the window screen so often. Believe the fantasies if you like. And now I want to do 2 quick slides to challenge you to think about what you're talking about when you say, okay, we need to eliminate fossil fuels. I'm seriously up for eliminating fossil fuels. I'm seriously up for putting our current way of living into reverse. But what it means are things like this. Global trade within 10 years is going to have to be down 80 or 90%. Massive production of anything, forget it. It's all going to be local. How on earth do you think you're going to claw the rare earths and the minerals from the grounds that make our everything from our windmills to our mobile phones? There will have to be, and there will be, a massive restructuring of every conceivable system in our society. I've thrown the little picture on the right because one of the few bright spots I see is in what Verity and others are going to present in terms of how we use the land. Giving the planet back to the planet is largely our only way of escaping from this mess that we've created. I won't spend too much time on this. I know I'm probably come to the end of my presentation, but again, were we to survive, and this is a long way short of a certainty, we will have moved within 10 years to what I show on the right-hand side. And it's basically local, 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 local. Forget your globalized growth. It's over. I don't expect anyone to understand this. I barely understand it myself. But once again, what I'm showing is that the bottom chunk is where all the fossil fuels and those fuels that use combustion to generate useful energy still constitute way over 87% of all energy usage on this planet. And there's no way that changes in 10 years. The only option we have for getting out of this mess is stopping doing stuff, not doing clever stuff that we pretend to ourselves are green. This is a little test to make sure everyone's been listening. The first bullet point is lovely. You'll all have heard this, but you think you heard it 3 months ago from the IPCC when they said we have 12 years, and John's just updated it to 10 years because he's exaggerating. Governments have a 10-year window of opportunity to solve the greenhouse effect before it goes beyond human control. Well, it was the UN who said that. But when did they say it? They said it 30 years ago. We've missed the window. We're living on borrowed time. The patient is in resuscitation. We just don't know yet. Go down to the second last bullet. The specific web of life to which we belong will collapse totally within 10 to 20 years. It is already collapsing all around you. It's collapsing inside you. It's collapsing in your countries. It's collapsing here. Unless. If there's no unless, most of you are going to be here at the end. That's how quickly it'll happen. What happens when a kid stops growing? Can anyone imagine a teenager who keeps growing? Can you imagine a greater horror than a teenager who keeps growing? At some stage, Homo sapiens had to actually live up to the name sapiens. We're supposed to be intelligent. We're not. We're incredibly agile. We're incredibly clever. Homo habilis, maybe, we should have said. We're good at making stuff, but we're not particularly wise. What comes after growth is maturity. The poor guy on the right hand side, Robert Pershing Ludlow, was the tallest human being who ever lived. His life was utterly miserable. He lived in agony and he died in agony. The second bullet point, you will only hear this here today. You will have never heard it before, and you will probably never hear it again. So this is the second thing you should pay attention to. Growth, economic growth, the growth of our civilization, is incompatible with survival. Deal with it. That's it. We have to start going backwards. The second law of thermodynamics, the one that you all think you know, the one about entropy and things getting more messy and so on and so forth, can essentially be summed up as follows. I have a number of friends who spent a lot of time working on this definition. Just so you have this in your back pocket the next time you meet some techno-idiot who tells you he has the solution to everything. The second law of thermodynamics essentially says you cannot build a machine to clean up the mess you made making the machine. And that's only in this universe. I'm well aware of the fact that economists and bureaucrats and politicians have clearly visited universes to which I have no access. But in this universe, this is the truth. We have to stop doing things, not pretending that we can make a nice clean machine that does the thing that the dirty machine did before. It's exactly the same. It's a wonderful quote here from a poet Houseman who I like. And I wonder about the preponderant role of messed up white males, Western white males, in bringing us to where we are now. And he had this marvelous line in the poem, says, "I, a stranger and afraid, in a world I never made." There's something about the alienation of the Western white male that has led us down this path, and it needs to be re-examined. How do we re-examine it? I'm not going to tell you what you should or shouldn't do, but I suspect most of you come from cultures, as I do myself. I'm Irish, we have great ancient cultures before the Catholic Church came and caused us a few problems, but I won't go into that. So most of you have ancient traditions and cultures that point the way to some sort of wisdom. You may need to reconnect. Those of you who like the Dalesian, man is ruled by earth. I mean, read it. How obvious is this? When do we think we were put here to dominate it? Man is ruled by earth, earth by heaven. Heaven is ruled by the Tao, Tao only by itself. The Rubaiyat or Omar Khayyam, if you happen to be of a Sufi or whatever inclination. The worldly hope men set their hearts upon turns ashes, or prospers, and anon like snow on the desert's dusty face, lighting a little hour or two, is gone. You need to reconnect with that. If that rings you have to find a way to get back there. The Buddha, big fan of this guy. Actions exist and also the consequences, but the person who acts does not. There exists no individual. It is only a conventional name given to a set of elements. What is this humanity we're trying to save? Is this worth saving? The way we live at the moment, worth saving? We need to do some deep thinking around this. Wisdom from the Western world is, of course, very rare. And if you do happen to come across it, it tends to be poets and lunatics. John Keats, the guy I quite like, in a poem which is called "When I Have Fears That I May Cease to Be." This is it's one of very few little gems you can pick from the West. Then on the shore of the wide world I stand alone and think, to love and fame, to nothingness to sink. We need to reconnect with our place in this universe. We need to reconnect in humility with the wisdom of the ages. Or we're out of here.